everybody. I am here with Roan today, and we are going to chat a little bit about Gay Rodeo. Do you want to introduce yourself and kind of how you got started with horses?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sarah Nichols, though most folks know me as Roan. I'm Roan Cowgirl on pretty much all major platforms. I got started in horses as a kid. I grew up a horse crazy kid, like I think most of us did. And I started actually by riding English. I rode hunters and I did some fox hunting for a little while. And then when I was probably 14 or so, I got into cutting horses. And that started my Western journey. As far as gay rodeo, I got into that on complete accident when I was 22. I loved watching the bucking horses growing up, going to the rodeos. I looked at and I said, that's something I want to do, but that's not something you're allowed to do as a woman. So I started digging. I found out there was some ladies that were riding ranch bronc and started researching how they were doing it, trying to find how you even get into the rodeo world because I don't come from any of this. I found that you need to go to a school and you need to find a school that teaches ranch bronc and allows women. And that was really hard to find around 2020. Of course, it was pandemic. I was cooped up, so I had nothing else I could do except Google and then go to work because I worked at a grocery store. 6 pages deep on Google, I found the International Gay Rodeo Association. And the way I found them is because they allowed women to compete and they offered ranch bronc. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've always wanted in my entire life, and I had no idea this existed, and I wasn't even looking for it. They didn't offer the rodeo school I was looking for, and schools are important because it's essentially like going and taking a lesson and learning how to tack your horse up and what the riding technique is, safety, all that stuff. It's very, very important you go attend the school, or you at least get mentoring with someone who knows what they're doing for ranch bronc because rough stock is very dangerous. It was their first rodeo back in Texas in 2022, and they didn't offer a school of any kind. I was like, you know what? I have YouTube. YouTube will be fine. So I spent hours watching saddle bronc videos because there wasn't many ranch bronc videos out at the moment. I was still kind of getting its start about that time.
Just a clarifying question for myself. What's the difference between saddle bronc and ranch bronc?
Okay, so technically there's 3 bronc events. There is saddle bronc, bareback bronc, and ranch bronc. Saddle bronc has a specialized saddle. It's an association saddle tree. The stirrups are forward hung. There's no horn. It's developed for riding broncs and riding broncs only. Bareback bronc, you have a handle that goes on the back of the horse, and that's the only point of contact you have on the horse is that handle. You don't have a rein, you don't have anything else. It's just handle, hand, and hang on for dear life. Ranch bronc, you're using a regular working saddle. So the saddle I use is the same saddle I ride in daily. It fits my girls, that's what I would use, and then I change it out slightly, throw it in the back of the truck, and I go to a rodeo. So really just different saddle. There's slightly different techniques as far as how you ride. Typically, you don't spur as much as you would on ranch bronc as you would for saddle bronc. The saddles don't allow that much movement, but the hack rein, all that stuff is the same.
Very cool. Thank you for explaining that. Not to interrupt your story or anything.
No, you're good. I forget that people don't know what bronc is in general and then all the differences because I look at it all day, every day. But yeah, no, I showed up to Texas and I didn't know what was going on. Like I said, I found a few YouTube videos. I said, I don't care how this happens. I'm going to the gay rodeo. I'm riding in the gay rodeo. I'm riding in ranch broncs. I'm going to make this happen. So I was scrambling. I brought myself a halter and I bought myself a hack rein literally a week before the rodeo and showed up, saddle in hand, halter in hand, nobody there, no clue what was going on. Showed up and rode. The stock contractor took pity on me. They ended up actually snatching my gear off of me and tacking my horse up for me in the chutes. And that's when I realized I actually didn't know anything. And I knew I didn't know nothing. Like I already knew I knew nothing about any of this, but I was like, oh, I knew even less than I thought I knew. That's how I got my start was in 2022. I only bucked out that 1 year and then went back in 2023 for Texas rodeo again, had some personal life stuff happen and wasn't able to compete until Missouri in 2024. And I rode there again. And then in 2024, I was also getting out and getting involved with some other ladies in ranch bronc. Brittany Miller was a big one. She teaches ranch bronc schools specifically for women to get them involved and get them going. And it is one of the best things you can spend your money on, like hands down. So that's how I got into it, and that's how I found gay rodeo and got my start into ranch bronc was just being a horse crazy kid and realizing that I was gonna get my way into this one way or the other.
I love that. And so I am in New England. I have been raised very English riding. This is my bias and my perception from up here. So I actually don't think I know about most rodeo events. And so I'm curious if you could just like give the highlights of if somebody were to show up in Utah, what would they see? What would some of the options be to go and watch?
So Gay Rodeo is really fun. They have your traditional events. You'll have breakaway roping that both men and women can compete in. Something with the association is, while it is gendered, and that is something folks have been trying to work on, it does allow men and women to compete in every event equally. Men can run barrels, women can team rope, women can ride bulls. It is unfortunately a gender binary division at the moment. But Gay Rodeo is really, really fun because you have all your usual events, but you also have some fun events. Specifically, Wild Drag Race is my favorite. And what that is a team of three, and they have a steer, and they get the steer over a line, and they put a drag queen up on the steer. And the steer has to ride back over the line, and the drag queen has to stay on top until she's back over that line. And then the fastest time wins.
Oh my gosh.
It is a hoot and a holler to watch. I've seen some of these teams go all out on costumes. My personal favorite was Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach. It was amazing. Watching Princess Peach ride a steer lives rent free in my head 24/7.
That's incredible.
Yeah, no. The nice thing about that, it's easier to get into versus something like Ranch Bronc, where you don't need equipment. You can just kind of show up. Maybe you need a dress if you're going to be the drag. But most people have something you can borrow as well. We also have goat dressing, which is you have a goat on one end of the arena and you have to run over and put underwear on him. And the fastest time to get underwear on the goat wins. You also have steer decorating, where there's a steer that comes out of a chute and he has a ribbon tied to his tail. And you have to run up and tie this ribbon to him. And again, fastest time wins. It sounds easy. I've seen so many people get kicked doing it. Always laughing the entire time. But yeah, we have that, and then alongside traditional rodeo events, we have some that have been tailored more for beginners or folks that may not have access to a horse. If you've seen steer wrestling where you're jumping off a horse and you have to grab onto a steer and pull it to the ground as you come off your horse, we have that event, but it's called shoot dogging. And what it is, it's more beginner friendly. If you're going to get started in steer wrestling, that was how you get started. You are in a chute with a steer and you come out, you cross over a line, and then you can dog it. You don't need anything but hopefully a vest if you want to use one, and a helmet. And again, you can borrow that stuff from other people. They also have calf roping on foot. All you need is a rope and a little bit of time to practice, and you can try to rope your own calf. And that's also a great beginner friendly way to get involved in rodeo events if you don't have a horse or don't feel confident roping off your horse at the moment. But it's really, really fun. They're really fun to watch. I love going just to watch them, especially the wild drag races, because that is the best event in this entire world.
That sounds like so much fun. That sounds truly just like such a good time.
Yeah, no, it is. It is so fun. It's so underrated because they don't advertise as well as I think they could, and people don't realize they exist. And I'm like, wow, drag racing is right in your backyard. Just go watch it. You had no idea it was here.
Are most of the events kind of in like the southern part of the country, like and like the Midwest, or
They move around. We do have associations across the US and one in Canada. I want to say the furthest north rodeo this year is going to be San Francisco. We do have the Atlantic States Gay Rodeo Association, and they encompass Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. But as of currently, they don't host any rodeos. They did host a rodeo school last year, and I believe they're gearing up to get a rodeo together. It just takes time and it takes people getting involved.
so if somebody Maine's probably a little too far north, but if somebody were to be interested in helping bring an event to their city, is there a way that people could get like involved in that decision making?
So the way IGRA runs, it's essentially an umbrella association. There is no IGRA only events aside from finals, which is in October. Everything else is run by smaller associations on a state or a regional level that are under the IGRA umbrella. So, like in Texas, our rodeo is put on by the Texas Gay Rodeo Association, but it is IGRA sanctioned because they work underneath them. If you wanted to get involved and get something going in your area, what you would have to do is get your own association started. And you can always get started just as a group of people. And once you build up a little bit, go apply for IGRA sanction and get into that umbrella and get into that support system.
And then I think this might be a very silly question, but I've been thinking about it this whole time because I thought that rodeos had their own bucking horses and then that was what was used for like broncs and stuff. Is that how it works? Or it sounds like you bring your own horses?
Oh, no, I don't bring my own. My girls are very broke. One of my horses is 11 and she just learned how to buck yesterday. I don't know if she'll remember today.
That's probably a good thing.
She's never figured it out under saddle either. She just kind of bounces back and forth and then thinks she did a really good job. And every time I'm like, "You did great, girl."
So you bring your own equipment, but then they have horses. Okay.
Bucking horses are actually bred for what they do. They're bred like jumpers or dressage horses are. We have our own breeding lines. We have our own programs. They're bred and trained to buck. And if they don't want to buck, they get called rejects and they get sold to a second career. I've seen some do really well and actually in the hunters and fox hunting worlds, as well as ranching worlds, cow worlds. Like they are versatile, amazing horses. But every horse we have is given through a contractor. It's the same for our bulls and our other stock. You're going to pair up with a contractor in your area. They'll bring all your stock out and they'll be in charge of all that. What I bring as a ranch bronc rider is myself and my equipment. I don't have anything to do with the horses until it's in the chute. And when it's in the chute is when I'm dealing with him.
That's amazing. And you have been making a lot of content online recently about Gay Rodeo because it is kind of at risk right now. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and what the situation is.
Yeah, so Gay Rodeo's had an issue in recent years. There hasn't been a lot of turnout in ranch bronc and a lack of interest, according to the association. I don't think it's as simple as saying it's a lack of interest and the people just don't want to ride ranch bronc anymore, because I see more and more associations popping up for bronc riders specifically and for women in ranch bronc, because we're not allowed to compete on normal circuits due to years and years and years of sexism. But I think it has to do with a lack of accessibility and the fact that the association trends older. I'd say the median age of the association is about 50, give or take. A lot of the guys on the circuit have been competing for many, many years, or as long as Gay Rodeo has been around, which was started in 1976. And the lack of accessibility, I mentioned earlier, going to a bronc school and learning. If I was to sign up for steer riding, shoot dogging, anything like that through Gay Rodeo, most of these rodeos would offer a school of some kind. And that's going to be usually the Friday before the rodeo. You show up, sign up for whatever events you want to sign up for, and you'll have someone coach you through how to do it. They'll show you how to pull your rope, they'll show you how to dog your steer, that kind of thing. Whereas Ranch Bronc doesn't have that at the moment. And I think it's because there's no one in the association that's seriously riding Ranch Bronc at the moment. There's no one to teach it. But it makes it hard because the association is an amateur-friendly association. They're open to anyone. You don't have to be gay. You just have to be of age to compete. And when you're beginner-friendly and amateur-friendly and you don't have access to education, it makes it not so beginner-friendly. And I think that's been the biggest issue with getting Ranch Bronc. So I've been working really hard on social media platforms and other avenues to try to get some interest going for the Utah Gay Rodeo this June. The Utah Rodeo will host broncs. To my understanding, it's the only rodeo this year that will have broncs. And I'm trying to get a good turnout and prove that there's interest there, and also lower that barrier of accessibility for others that want to get started in this, because I would love others to experience this association the way I've experienced it and be able to get involved in a sport that I love.
That makes a lot of sense that there's like an education component missing, which is resulting in like fewer people doing it if it is like beginner forward. If folks are interested in bronc riding, like you sought it out specifically, how did you find the education you needed to do it successfully?
So I don't recommend doing it the way I did it, just showing up and going from there. That's a very easy way to get hurt. And bronc riding is one of those things you're going to get hurt with, like most other sports. It's not if, it's when. However, let's not invite it by being stupid. If anyone's interested in getting involved, they're welcome to DM me on TikTok or Instagram or anywhere they'd like. Those are the two I'm most commonly on, but I'm also on Blue Sky and YouTube, and just look my name up. You'll find me eventually. I have gear. I have all my gear. I'm happy to loan it. I'm happy to walk you through as best I can. The Utah school, unfortunately, sorry, the Utah Rodeo unfortunately will not have a school this year, but I am trying to work as best I can within my means to make it accessible for other folks that want to show up and try it, and make sure that they're not doing what I did, where they showed up on the back of the chutes and they got their tack taken away from them and thrown on the horse. Really, with ranch bronc and any other rough stock events, you don't want anyone else touching your tack when you're on the back of the chutes. You want someone there to help you, someone that you trust. But if you don't know that person that's taking your tack and tacking your horse up, you don't know if they did it right. You don't know if that horse was tack tight enough, loose enough, that kind of thing. And I have actually seen people get hurt because they've made bad rigging mistakes. It's career ending if you don't do it right. So having the ability to go talk to somebody and say, hey, this is how we're going to get it done. This is how your tack needs to be. You know, I'll be there for you. Make sure your tack's going to be set up right, walk you through it, get you on the chute. We'll be good to go, is what I'm trying to do and the best I can, despite not having a school.
And if people are interested in supporting but aren't necessarily interested in participating, what can they do?
Oh, so there's multiple ways you can support both Gay Rodeo and the Ranch Bronc issue at the moment. With Gay Rodeo, it does require participating, but if you just show up to events, if you show up and buy a ticket to come watch a rodeo, or if they're having a fundraising event like a drag show and you go to it because there's one near you, that supports the association. All these associations and all these rodeos are nonprofit, and they give back to the local community, and they work really hard to build their own community within the rodeo industry. Other ways you can support is through sponsorships. The Utah rodeo specifically is needing buckle sponsors to cover their awards, ribbon sponsors, and they're always looking for sponsorships for the rodeo itself, try to offset cost. You can also, if you're interested in supporting Ranch Bronc specifically, I do have a Ko-Fi set up. It's a crowdfunded sponsorship for Ranch Bronc riders. If you are a first-time IGRA competitor or a first-time Ranch Bronc rider, you're eligible to have your entry fees for Ranch Bronc paid through this sponsorship. If I have money left over from the sponsorship after pre-registration closes, I'll be donating any leftover money to the Trevor Project. But I set this up as a attempt to get more interest and decrease that barrier of accessibility just a little bit more. Entry fees are really reasonable for the gay rodeos, but I don't want there to be any kind of barrier or any kind of, oh, I'd love to go to this, but you know, the $60 in fees is a little too much for me. Just to help give people a leg up, kind of say, hey, we see you, we want you here, is what I'm trying to do with this.
So you mentioned that Gay Rodeo has been around for a while now, and I'm curious if you want to talk to their like start and evolution and kind of how we ended up here.
Yeah, so Gay Rodeo's in its 50th anniversary this year. We're going to be having a big reunion at the finals rodeo this year in October in Reno, Nevada, which is where the first Gay Rodeo was held. Gay Rodeo was started in 1975 by a gentleman named Phil Ragsdale, and he started it to help raise money for the local senior citizens Thanksgiving feed. And it became a recurring event every year as they found nonprofits to donate to and raise money for and give back to their local community. Now, a few years in, AIDS started, the AIDS pandemic, and they shifted gears and they started donating their money to the AIDS foundations and raising money for them. We actually lost a lot of members in the AIDS pandemic. There's a lot of folks in the association, if you talk to them, they'll tell you fond stories about friends they had that passed away due to it. But that's something they were donating to, and once the AIDS pandemic cooled down a little bit, they continued going and donating to various organizations and have continued to do so every year. Gay Rodeo has been amazing because it's a safe space for all LGBTQ plus folks, and you don't really have to be a certain kind of way to be there. You don't have to fit a certain stereotype. You don't have to fit a certain mold. During the height of Gay Rodeo, we had folks that were riding the professional circuits actually showing up and competing under pseudonym names because they were closeted. But that was one of the few places they felt like they could show up and actually be themselves. And something else that made it really unique, especially for its time period, was the fact that it allowed men and women to compete in all events equally. It didn't put that gender binary or that gender exclusion in like traditional rodeo does. One thing I have noticed in recent years, the association has been on a downward trend. We've actually seen a lot more turnout in the last probably year or two with folks showing up. But when I started, I was surprised at how small it was for what it was. Because I showed up expecting like hundreds of people, lines out the door. Um, what's not to love about a gay cowboy or cowgirl? Um, I didn't see that. It was a small event, kind of conservative on how it looked on the outside, so folks didn't really know it was there unless you knew it was there. And as a result of that, I think there's been a decline in interest, and I've had older members tell me there's been a decline in interest, and it's to the point that we've had associations shut down through the years. I don't recall how many associations there were during the height of gay rodeo, but I do know places like Washington and Oregon both had their own association, and that is now completely non-existent. There was one out in Tennessee, and that's also gone. And I would love to see enough interest in various places that folks organize and are able to get new associations going and really bring this back to how it was originally. Because I firmly believe the interest is there. It's just a lack of visibility to folks that don't know gay rodeo exists, rather than a lack of interest in gay rodeo itself.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. For me, I literally didn't know it existed until you were talking about it. And that was my first introduction to it. So that makes a lot of sense.
I had a association chapter in the city I was living in. I was living in Austin at the time, and I had no idea it was there. I'm like, I've been here for 7 years at this point. I had no idea this existed right here. So it's very hard to find if you're online. They're getting better about it, and I've found it's a little bit easier to get involved with it. But if anyone has questions or is trying to find a local chapter and like that, they're always welcome to shoot me a message. I am more than happy to help on any of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And you have a lot of good content on your page too about gay rodeo and what's going on. And I've really enjoyed watching your videos and kind of keeping up with what's happening. Are there other places or links that you want to shout out that people can go to for information?
Oh yeah. First off, IGRA.com is the main hub for all of your rodeo stuff. They have a schedule of rodeos coming up. They'll have a list of associations, that sort of thing. On TikTok specifically, there is the Illinois Gay Rodeo Association. You can find it by searching ILGRA. That is run by the vice president of the ILGRA, and she does a lot of really cool stuff. She does videos and snapshots from rodeos that she's been going to, as well as some history. But getting on Facebook as well, most of the associations have some kind of Facebook presence, and that's where you're going to find most of the information. If you're interested in more history on gay rodeo, there is a podcast called Outward, and they did a podcast on gay rodeo back in March called Slapping Leather: The Untamed History of Gay Rodeo. Highly recommend that podcast. It was fantastic listening, and it was an interview with the author of Slapping Leather: Queer Cowfolks at the Gay Rodeo by Alyssa Ford and Rebecca Schofield. And that's also a fantastic book I recommend picking up and reading. That goes more into the history of gay rodeo versus gay rodeo modern day, but it's very insightful, offers a lot of different viewpoints, and there was so much time and work put into those.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think you have some links and stuff that you're going to share with me. So those will be in the description of this episode as well if you are interested in more. Or you can find Sarah as Roan Cowgirl on whatever platform it is you're looking at. And thanks so much for taking the time to come on and talk with me. This was great. I'm really excited to put this out.
Yeah, this was awesome.
All right. Well, we will talk to you later. Thank you for joining us this week at the Horse Girl Gazetteer. You can find us online at Horse Girl Gazetteer on Facebook or Instagram, and Horse Girl Gazette on TikTok and Patreon. You can also email us questions or comments at horsegirlgazetteer@gmail.com. If you find yourself enjoying our content, please leave us a review and share the link with your friends to help others find their way here. Any and all support is greatly appreciated. Talk to you later.